Well, good morning. Welcome back to GP Outdoors. Well, better late than never. The winter finally arrived, the trails opened up just this week, and we finally went out for our first run of the season yesterday. A couple of friends and myself took an all-day ride. We left early yesterday morning. I got back around 5:30, 6 o'clock, just as nightfall. And for you folks that are from Ontario or like to sled through this part of the region, we took a couple of trails straight up on the east side of Algonquin Park out to a little town called Lake St. Peter. Beautiful run out there, beautiful run. And hey, if you do like snowmobiling, you might want to subscribe to David Clark's channel. It's called My Old Sled. I've been subscribed to him for years. Really good channel, a lot of DIY stuff, how to maintain things, how-tos. A lot of good advice, suggestions, and information on skidoos and as well as on ATVs. He's been around a long time, knows a lot of stuff. I think he's in Ontario as well. I think he's up in the Bruce Peninsula up by Lake Huron. Good channel though if you're interested. Little trick he taught us is that it's really important not to leave your track flat on the ground in the wintertime because it'll usually end up freezing into the earth. So you want to get it up off the ground. And I just do the same thing as I do with my attachments with the tractor. I threw a pallet under there. When I'm finished riding for the day, I just back it up onto the pallet, keeps it off the ground and keeps it from freezing in. Thanks, David. So today I thought it'd be time for a bit of a channel update. It's been a while. I usually like to do one about once a year, and we're into just around the beginning of February now. So I want to take a few minutes, maybe a little longer than a few minutes, maybe do a little bit of channel talk. Also wanted to talk about YouTube a bit because I've got a lot of questions around that type of thing, and also talk about the things that I think are coming for this year in 2020. I've had a few subscribers who've asked me if I could do a little bit of snowmobile footage if I had the time. I got a little footage in yesterday, not much, but I thought maybe I'm going to finish up here, going to head inside, get the coat off and get settled, and while I do that, maybe you can enjoy the next film roll. I'll see you inside at the fireplace. Cheers. Oh, boy, that's really welcome when you come in from the cold. Before we start the channel update today, I wanted to send out a special thanks to another longtime subscriber named Larry and to his son-in-law from down in the US. Got home to another surprise the other day. Wanted to thank you very much, Larry, and a big thanks to your son-in-law. Got 2 different roasts of coffee in the mail. They're both from a company down in Tennessee, I believe, called the Black Rifle Coffee Company. And you're absolutely right. One of my subscribers, or one or two of them, had mentioned over time that they make really good coffee. Larry and his son-in-law sent me 2 different blends. One was their holiday blend, which is a really nice medium blend, a little lighter than an average medium. My wife and my daughter love this one. And this is their Just Black. Good, robust, solid medium blend. Great aroma, great taste. It's my favorite, Larry. Thanks again, guys. I really appreciate it. Cheers. So let's talk a little bit about YouTube first. So for some time, I've had a number of subscribers asking me a lot of questions about YouTube in general and my channel in YouTube. I think with the inclination or the idea that they may want to start their own channel. I could talk for an hour about YouTube, but I'm not going to hold you that long. But I did want to offer some of my high-level thoughts just generally out there for a number of folks. I've also had people ask me about what type of camera equipment and those kind of things that I use. So I'll show you that in a few minutes as well. As it pertains to YouTube, I'd offer a few things. And again, this is coming from someone that started a channel 2 years ago from scratch. I had never actually tried to edit and create a video and upload publicly to YouTube before I started this channel. So I've learned a lot over time, but I'm certainly still learning as I go. But for what it's worth, here are a few thoughts for you to consider. So from my perspective, if you're looking to start a YouTube channel on whatever your content or subject is, whether it's tractors, knitting, pets, whatever that area is or that single area of focus is that you want your channel to be around, I'd offer that you treat it like you would a small startup business because it's very similar. Assumedly, as you're starting the channel, if your end goal is that you want to be monetized and you want to at some point be able to make an income off the channel, then it is kind of similar to a startup. That being that you recognize that you're going to invest a lot of time, some money, and we'll talk about that in a second, and at some point you're hoping that you're going to start, generating revenue, and at some point thereafter you're going to actually generate a profit. So similar to any kind of basic standard business model, you want to consider a 3-year timeline to be profitable. So when you start your channel, I would offer that you don't put out a ton of money and run out and spend $5,000 on a bunch of cameras and audio equipment and those kind of things. I would say start with what you've got. The first thing you have, similar to any business, is you have a product idea. In this case, it's content on YouTube. And let's say, for argument's sake, your channel idea is tractors. You want a channel focused around tractors. But similar to any product in a new business, you don't know how well that channel is going to be received yet until you try it. So similar to market testing a new product, you're going to market test your new channel. And the product on your channel, of course, is your content, which is tractors. So before you spend a lot of money or invest a lot of capital in that idea or that business, you want to kind of market test it a bit. So you start your channel with whatever it is you have, and if for whatever reason you don't have some kind of a basic camera that records and some kind of basic software, then be prudent in the spending at the beginning and try to get what you need and nothing more. Start, create your channel, start creating your content, and see over a short period of time whether it's starting to get traction or not. Are people starting to watch it? Are you getting subscribers? Do you see it growing over time? And it will grow slowly at first. It doesn't grow quick. Because although we all hear about those channels that take right off right after they're launched and people make millions of dollars, I'm not talking about those anomalies or those data points, kind of outside the standard deviation, so to speak. I'm talking about kind of the average, or what I've seen at least in the last few years is going to happen in reality, generally speaking. It's going to be very slow to uptick, and you're going to find that when you start off the channel, like a business, you're going to have to invest. You're going to have expenses because you're going to have to buy equipment. Not only are you going to have to buy equipment as the channel grows, but you're going to have to improve the equipment you have and in fact start buying equipment that you may not have had to that point. So there are expenses that you're actually putting into the business or your YouTube channel at the same time that hopefully at some point in the future you'll reach revenue. And when you start to get revenue, assuming that you get that there, and I certainly wish you all the luck and hope you do, you also have to kind of temper your expectations, because I think we all hear a lot of stories about people making a lot of money. And from experience, it doesn't start off a lot of money, and it's probably a little less than what you might be expecting. I think when you start to get up into, 100,000 subscribers, 200,000 subscribers, etc., you start to make some real material money. But in the initial period of that YouTube channel's life cycle, it's not a lot of money and it's not material. It will hopefully grow over time as you keep putting more effort into it, but recognize that you have expenses that you have to put into the channel, and at some point you're hoping you're going to start making revenue from it. So now you're making revenue. That's great, and congratulations. So you're monetized, you're starting to get revenue, but like a small startup, you've got to take that revenue, in my opinion, and you've got to invest it back in your business. Because now maybe it's time to get that HD camera instead of the one that's been shooting 720p. Maybe it's time for upgraded audio equipment or new tripods or mounts. Similar to what we find here, camera needs to be replaced from time to time. They don't like negative 25-degree weather, and they don't last long. You need to start buying extra batteries maybe, SD cards, your hard drives. There's a number of different ongoing expenses which become larger as your channel becomes larger. Because I think, generally speaking, as your channel becomes larger, your subscribers and viewers want to see more out of your channel. And in order to continue to grow, you need to make sure that the camera equipment, the infrastructure that you have behind what you're doing with your content, how well you're editing, all of those things kind of come together to allow the channel to continue to grow over time. And so you now get more expenses, whether it's repairing existing equipment or replacing existing equipment. There's an ongoing spend. Software, it's another one. At some point you may outgrow that basic free software that came with your computer, and you may have to invest in software, which is a little more costly. So there's a number of things along the way that come into play. Not to mention, we haven't even talked about how many hours or how much labor you've been putting into your business. So now your revenue's growing, hopefully your channel's growing. At some point, although you're still continuing to invest in your business, you'll get to some point, hopefully, where there's enough money left over that you can actually start paying yourself, or you can start keeping that money. And at some point, you're now making it a profit, and it'll become more and more profitable, hopefully, over time. But the time frame that occurs, generally speaking, is not short. It's a lot of work. It's a labor of love. So why do I do it? I do it for a couple of reasons. One, it's creative. I enjoy doing it. I love being outside. I've been fortunate enough to have a wonderful subscriber base and a lot of great online friends, and I get just as much out of the channel as I put in. Forget about what little money it currently makes or my net current position, because I've still got a ways to go. Of course, it's only been about 2 years, but I get a lot out of the relationships I've gotten to build on this channel, a lot of information and advice that have helped me to do better and to learn a lot more about looking after my property and my outdoors and my tractor than I ever would have had if I didn't have this channel. So there's a couple of additional benefits that make it worthwhile to do. Not to mention, it's kind of fun. It can be a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun. And I enjoy every morning waking up to those comments. I put my coffee on. I get to talk to a lot of folks every week that I never knew before, and these folks have helped me along the way. So it's pretty beneficial for me. Let's take a look at the camera and the audio equipment that I use, because a lot of folks have asked about that. So let me run through my equipment. When I first started the channel, I had one camera. It was this bullet camera. It's called a Replay. That's all I had. I used to use it for trail riding and ATVing and those kind of things, hooked on the side of my helmet. Did the job to start off, about 720p I think is its max, but I started using this camera because it's what I had. After a little while, especially in the cold, because it doesn't like the cold too much, I eventually over time talked my daughter into letting me borrow her little Hero Session, I think it's called. It's a little cube camera, it's a GoPro, pretty simple design, but it shoots 1080p, and I thought that was kind of important because I did have a few folks telling me that my videos were a little grainy. Similarly, they both have built-in microphones, and they both had a similar challenge as I went through this phase. As you'll notice, there's no screen on them, so you can't actually see where it's being pointed. You can estimate where it's being pointed, but there's no screen on the back or any way visually to see exactly what's going to be framed in the shot when you turn on the video. And that's why you may remember some of the earlier videos, there were some where my head was cut off, or I'd be explaining or talking about a piece of equipment on the tractor and half the piece of equipment was missing out of the frame. It's because you basically point these things where you think you want to put them and you turn them on. They also have built-in microphones, not really good in the wind. At some point after a little while, this guy here started losing it during the wintertime because, again, negative 25, negative 30 degree weather is not good for these cameras. I finally had to save up a little money because it was actually before I started to get monetized. And I bought my first GoPro number 5 Black, I believe it's called. And this was a big jump and a big step up for me. Has 3 built-in microphones, has a visual display on the back. It also has multiple different types of framing, whether it's a wide frame or a really narrow frame. I don't use any of the other functionality beyond that. I have tried time shifting or time lapse a few times, but generally speaking, I leave them. I may change the type of frame, but I turn them on, I let them run. Has good quality shots, as you folks have seen. They're small. They come with a number of different mounts that you can get for them. So you're able to get some good action shots on the equipment. But similarly, over time, these don't like the cold either. And sooner or later, I ended up having to replace one. And I eventually also picked up a second one. So I very seldom, if ever, use these anymore. This one pretty much doesn't work anymore. This guy, he'll work for a little bit, depending on the weather outside. But now my mainstay are these 2 cameras for as long as they last. This one's kind of on its way out. The microphones on it are not really as good as they used to be. I think they've been worn a little bit, but they're doing okay overall. And as well, I use a Canon EOS M50, and I'll try to get a shot with that with one of these cameras and insert it above me here. And that's my latest camera, which I bought over the last year. Much nicer camera, great shots, far more functionality that's easy to use. And it also allows me to easily manage exposure and a number of other different types of things, which I'm learning about from a camera perspective. Shoots great photos. I don't, wrap that on the side of a tractor, but I will use it on a tripod when I'm doing pieces like this right here. In addition to that, as you can see, I have a number of different mounts which I use. Small ones for the ground, ones that'll stand a little taller off the ground, clip-on mounts to go on the side of equipment if I want to get a close-up shot. One of my favorite mounts, the suction mount. This guy will go just about anywhere, but you got to put him on really carefully and make sure it's on nice and firm before you fire up the tractor. Or you may find your camera coming out the chute on the snowblower. Great mount. In addition to that, I think I'm on my 5th or 6th hard drive. You go through a lot of hard drives because you're pumping out a lot of data on those cameras. Spare batteries, more mounts. I finally picked up myself up a bag. And over this last year, I finally had some or enough money made on the channel that I could start to invest a little bit in audio equipment. I also had a number of subscribers who left me respectful messages over a period of time saying, great content, love the channel, but that wind noise in the background is really annoying, or your video or your audio on your video just needs improvement, and you really need to start looking at investing in audio equipment. And they were absolutely right. But at the time, I was not making enough money saved that I could start purchasing the audio equipment. But I finally got to a point where I was able to purchase a piece and then a second piece. Picked up a directional mic. This is a Rhodes mic. I got it on sale, and it came with one of these fuzzy things which is supposed to keep the wind noise down. And generally speaking, it does, but nothing I have so far totally eliminates the wind on a really windy day. This guy's pretty sharp though. In addition to him, I did a lot of research, got a really reasonably priced wireless lav mic. And that's what I use quite often when I'm on and around the cottage and I'm using my M50 Canon. Sits in the back pocket, it's wireless, and it's connected to the back of the camera right now as we speak. In addition to that, of course, as you might imagine, I have several tripods. This guy here's kind of seen the biscuit, but hey, as the old saying goes, nothing little duct tape won't fix. I'm still getting some use out of it. It's old and it's been beat up in the forest a little bit, but it's still plugging along. And I have 2 other tripods, so I can set up multiple views and get multiple angles on the channel. Short of that, I used to use iMovie on my Apple Mac. This past year, I also upgraded the software and I now use Final Cut Pro. And it provides a lot more functionality. I got a ton more to learn on it. So all in all, SD cards, batteries, hard drives, mounts. These are my main cameras, and of course the Canon M50. That's my current audio and video equipment. Let's talk about GP Outdoors. So I just wanted to highlight some answers to a lot of similar questions I've received on the channel, as well as talk about what's coming for 2020. A couple of things I just want to reiterate that I've maintained since I started the channel. One, I like to keep this a fun channel. I like it to be realistic and honest. Basically, the channel is what I do here on the property. I don't try to create things or invent things to try to create video about on the channel. It's just basically a channel about what I do here on the property and up north here. So that means that sometimes some things are seasonal. You know, in the fall, you'll see a lot more firewood videos than you might want to see. Now in the wintertime, perfect example, I'm clearing snow 2 or 3 times a week. So you're going to see primarily videos on snow blowing. I sometimes get comments from folks saying, hey, you know, why don't you show us some other stuff? For example, one of our subscribers asked if I could show you the fireplace. Well, there's the fireplace. Just kidding, but true. But at the end of the day, I know that you'd probably love more variety on the channel sometimes than you get, but my channel is basically about what I do. The other thing you'll find is that although I may do different videos repeatedly or over a period of time, I try to answer questions or help people who have questions that I receive in the comments. So for example, you'll remember last winter I did a series of videos on the rear blade. The reason I did it is because I got a lot of great suggestions and advice as to how to use that blade differently when clearing snow. And of course, I want to try out those different suggestions. And it also answers questions from people trying to see different ways of using the blade, which is why there was a focus for about a month and a half last winter on primarily the rear blade as opposed to the snowblower. Surprisingly, over the last little while, I've had a lot of engagement on the snowblower, which is why you'll probably notice that there's been a lot of focus on the snowblower as it pertains to clearing snow. But either way, within those videos, I'm trying to answer common questions that I'm receiving in the comments, because I just think it's important that if you watch the channel and you're asking questions, and if I can get it into a video or try to find a way to present it so that we get other subscribers who are able to comment and provide advice to the people asking, I think it's good for everybody. So I tend to try to do that. I still, to this day, as I said, I like the channel to be fun and what it is. So you'll notice I don't offer opinions on politics or controversial items or topics. It's not that I don't have opinions. The way I look at it is you go through what you do every day and you put up with that or you're engaged in that all day long. When you finally get a chance to sit down and put your feet up, I'm thinking you probably don't want to engage in more controversial discussion. So I try to show you something that you must be interested in because you tune into the channel. And that leads me to my next point. I have had people that have said, you know, you show us a lot of things with the tractor or with splitting wood or, you know, clearing the driveway, but can you show us other things? You know, show us the snowmobile, which you saw a little bit of today, the ATV. Perhaps you can do some videos on other topics or things outside of that, because we see that all the time. Well, as I mentioned earlier on the YouTube part, any tutorials you read on YouTube will tell you that you need to stay focused on what your channel is all about. And generally speaking, when you're small, you kind of decide this is going to be the focus of my channel, or, you know, in this case, it's outdoors. And you put a box around that. And every tutorial you watch will tell you you never go outside the box, because the reason that most of you are watching is because of that outdoor activity. The tractor, splitting wood, working in the forest, the things that you do around the cottage or the cabin. That's why most of you tune in. I think when you get to be a really large channel with a couple 100,000 subscribers or somewhere up there, then you have the flexibility to maybe go outside the box a bit and expand what your box looks like. I've proven it several times over. Since I started the channel, I have done videos on the snowmobile. I've done ATV trail videos, done a video on solar, did a video on smart home technology, done videos outside of the tractor and the outdoors. And I always find every time that the views are this big. They're very small. And what that tells me is that although I have a small contingent of people that might be interested also in those topics, the majority of you are not interested. So when you tune in because you see I've posted a video, I think generally speaking, you're all looking forward to seeing that interest subject that is generally the topic of this channel. So that's why I don't branch out of the box too often. And I hope that explains it well for the folks that have asked. And hopefully you understand that if I could go out, or if I had a broad following of people that wanted to see all those different things, then I would certainly try my best to expand the channel. But right now, I think the primary focus is why most people are currently tuned in. I still to this day, and it's probably just because I still have a lot to learn as it pertains to editing and creating videos, but it usually still to this day takes me on average about 10 hours to produce a video. And so that's why sometimes you'll find that, you know, my video will get released within a day or two of the day I film it. Sometimes it's 4 or 5 days later, because I'm trying to do that editing, or the remainder of wrapping up the editing, production and uploading, etc., when I have the time to do it after I've done, you know, whatever chore or project I've done. And it was funny because one of our subscribers sent me a comment the other day, and he said, "Hey, you must have done this video about 5 days ago because that rainstorm occurred last week." And he was absolutely right. I just wasn't able to get the video finished in a timely manner, so it took 4 or 5 days to get it out to you folks. But I don't purposely hold videos for a month or two or anything like that. I do them, and then I try to get them edited and uploaded when I'm able to get them done, usually late at night. And that's why sometimes you'll see the videos are a little delayed, but they're usually within, you know, 4, 5, 6 days of the day I've actually done the activity. The opportunity that I've had on the channel over time to be able to try out new pieces of equipment or technology from different manufacturers that have been loaned or provided to me to try out and to learn how to use has been pretty beneficial, I think, to both of us. And I just wanted to reiterate, I still have not changed the approach that I use with the manufacturers that contact me to ask me if I'll try out or test out their equipment on the channel. I still to this day don't take any financial compensation for that equipment that's provided to me. It's always provided to me on the basis of a loaned piece of equipment, and at some point that equipment usually will go back to them. But that allows me, in my view, to be free of any conflict of interest. It allows me to show you the equipment on the channel. We both get to learn how it works. And as I've promised you in the past, I will always show you everything about the piece of equipment. So that's the good, the bad, and if there's ugly, the ugly. So far, we've been really fortunate because we've got some really good equipment that we've been able to see together, see how well built it is, how it performs, and those kind of things, which I think inform all of us in the event that we at some point need that type of equipment. But to this day, I never tell you to buy a piece of equipment, because this channel's purpose is not to sell you equipment. It's just to show you the equipment, demonstrate the equipment, and use the equipment and see how well it performs. On that note, let's talk about 2020. I've currently got 4 new pieces of equipment lined up so far for this coming year, and I have 2 other discussions underway with manufacturers, so I'm pretty excited about that. It'll give us a little more new content as the year goes on, and we'll get to see some other different types of equipment that we haven't seen yet on the channel, which is pretty exciting. In addition to that, got to keep building those trails in the forest for my wife. I promised her that, I think, 2 years ago, and I think we only did about 270 or 280 feet of trails last summer. As usual, the driveway, always work to do in the driveway. I'm trying to take it now in sections, because I think, as a few subscribers suggested, it's a big job to try to grade and fix a mile-long driveway all at once, and I think that's the right way to approach it, and that's what we'll continue doing this summer. In addition to that, got lots of wood to cut, you know, the property to maintain, and all the other different things that I'll be doing and different chores around the property. I hope you'll stick around with me for 2020. So I think that about wraps it up for today. Sorry, I know it was a long video, but I had a lot of stuff to cover, and I know a lot of you folks like channel updates from time to time. I hope it was helpful and informative, and most importantly, answered a lot of the questions that I've had that are common on this channel over the last while. I wanted to put out a special thanks to all of you subscribers. I love the interactions, and I love the relationships we've built, and I really, really appreciate the support that's helped to grow this channel so far to where it's at, and hopefully we'll continue to grow this year. Got lots coming up. Have a wonderful week with your families, and a happy and prosperous 2020, and I'll see you again on the next one. Cheers.